Welcome. Settle yourself in a comfortable position and let your thoughts begin to drift. You've chosen to spend this time in a quiet exploration of the past. A past, though long gone, still lingers in stones, in stories, and in the traces left behind by countless ordinary lives. Tonight, we will wander through the world of ancient Rome. When we imagine Rome, it is easy to think only of triumphal arches, of polished marble statues, and of heroic generals marching under fluttering standards. But the true rhythm of Roman life was far humbler, and often far less pleasant. It was lived in the cluttered tenements of ordinary citizens, in narrow streets filled with chatter and clamor, and in marketplaces that smelled as strongly of spoiled fish as they did of fresh bread. This is not the Rome of legend, but the Rome of daily survival, and it is here, among the insulae, the crowded apartment blocks, that we will begin our journey. As you listen, allow your imagination to take the place of sight. Picture yourself in the sandals of an ordinary Roman. Hear the hum of the city around you. Feel the weight of routine, and breathe in the air, thick with dust and smoke. Imagine waking up in a cramped room at the very top of a tall building. You share this space with your family, perhaps with a few neighbors as well. The walls are thin, patched with timber and plaster, and the ceiling leaks in the winter rains. This is an insula, one of Rome's countless apartment blocks. They rise several stories high, often built hastily and cheaply, towering above the twisting streets below. Your room is small, and it is bare. A straw mattress lies in the corner, its surface rough and prickly. The air smells faintly of smoke from the cooking fire of the neighbor beneath you, and the walls creak when the wind presses against them. The building itself seems always on the verge of collapse. Fires are common, and the poorly supported floors have been known to give way without warning. You begin your day early because, in Rome, the sun dictates the rhythm of life. There is no glass window to soften its light. Instead, a simple wooden shutter opens to the sky, and you hear the noise of the city rising with dawn. The clop of hoofs on paving stones, the call of vendors beginning to set up their stalls, the groan of carts dragging goods through narrow lanes. There is little privacy in this city. The walls are thin, and you can hear your neighbors as clearly as if they were in the same room. A baby crying, a pot clattering to the ground, someone muttering a quick prayer to the household gods. You make your way down the stairs. They are steep and uneven, and the smell grows stronger the lower you go. It is a mixture that never truly leaves the Roman street. Damp stone, animal dung, and the sharp tang of human waste. Sewers exist, yes, but not everywhere. Buckets are often emptied into the alleyways, and the result is a constant, lingering presence that presses on your senses. You step out into the street. It is narrow, far narrower than the grand roads we imagine from Roman ruins. The paving stones are cracked, and the alleys twist and bend. Sunlight barely reaches the ground here, caught high up between buildings that lean toward each other. Vendors are already shouting. You pass the bread seller first. His loaves are coarse, made with ground grain that sometimes still holds small flecks of stone, rough on the teeth. Bread is the foundation of your diet, and though it is filling, it rarely feels luxurious. A cup of watered wine, perhaps a smear of olive oil, will be your main meal. Meat is a rarity for the poor. The smell of fish sauce, garum, pungent and salty, drifts from another stall. It is a staple in Roman cooking, and its scent lingers in the air, sharp and unmistakable. As you walk, you must be cautious. Carts rumble past, pulled by donkeys. Drivers shout for people to move aside. And overhead, from a window, someone empties a chamber pot into the street. You hear the splash behind you and quicken your step, careful not to be caught beneath the sudden downpour. It is a city, alive with movement, and yet it is also a place of constant discomfort. Imagine yourself trying to sleep at night, with the noise of neighbors above and below, the barking of stray dogs outside, and the occasional shout of a watchman or the clash of drunkards in the street. Privacy, silence, and stillness are luxuries you will rarely find, and always there is the threat of fire. The lamps burn oil, and cooking fires smolder in every apartment. One small accident, one careless spark, and an entire insula can go up in flames. For this reason, the wealthier Romans prefer to live in villas, away from the danger. But for the majority, you live in constant awareness that disaster could come at any moment. Now, imagine visiting the public baths. They are not just for cleansing the body, but for conversation, for gossip, and for small pleasures in a life otherwise consumed by work. You step into warm water, letting it wash over you, and for a moment you forget the grime of the street. But even here, the baths are crowded, noisy, and filled with the smell of sweat, oils, and steam. The relief is temporary. As the day stretches onward, you notice the city growing hotter. Rome is a city of stone and dust. The sun bakes the paving stones, and the air grows heavy. You long for shade, but it is scarce in the packed neighborhoods of the poor. You return home with whatever food you can afford, perhaps a loaf of bread, a few olives, a bit of cheese. You eat quickly, for there is little to linger over. The day feels long, though the tasks are simple. And as darkness falls, you light a small lamp, listening once again to the layers of sound around you. Dogs bark, neighbors argue, a child cries. Somewhere outside, a flute player performs in the street. The melody rises faintly, carried on the warm night air. This is your life, day after day, in the crowded heart of Rome. It is noisy, it is dirty, and it is fragile. You are surrounded by greatness, temples, amphitheaters, markets brimming with goods from across the empire. Yet you yourself feel the weight of survival pressing down on you. And so, it becomes clear, you would not last long in ancient Rome. At least, not comfortably. For while the city was magnificent in reputation, it was also a place of ceaseless struggle for its countless, ordinary inhabitants. Now that you have walked through the daily routines of an ordinary Roman, let us turn our attention to a single life, one that rose out of obscurity and into the annals of history. A life that, though dramatic in its events, can be told in a way that reminds us of the larger rhythms of time, of struggle, and of inevitable decline. This is the story of Spartacus. When you hear his name, perhaps you imagine a gladiator, a man fighting with sword or spear before cheering crowds. This image is not wrong, though it is incomplete. Spartacus began not as a hero, nor even as a figure of rebellion, but as a man who was enslaved, forced into circumstances that stripped him of freedom and dignity. His early life is shadowed in mystery. Most believe he was from Thrace, a region to the north of Greece, rugged and mountainous. The Thracians were known as fierce warriors, and Spartacus may have served as a soldier before falling into Roman hands. Exactly how he was captured remains uncertain. Some accounts suggest desertion, others capture in battle. What is clear is that he was brought into the Roman system of slavery, and from there into the brutal world of the gladiatorial school. Imagine the school for a moment. Not a place of learning, but of training. It's a compound filled with men from every corner of Rome's empire. Gauls, Germans, Africans, Greeks, all stripped of their freedom, all trained for combat. The days were long, filled with drills, practice fights, and the constant awareness that at any moment you might be summoned to fight for entertainment. Meals were plain but sustaining. Barley, porridge, beans, and bread, intended to keep bodies strong, but not lives comfortable. It was here, in the city of Capua, that Spartacus began to form bonds with his fellow gladiators. In their shared hardship, there grew whispers of escape. Life in the arena was not only dangerous, it was degrading. To fight for the amusement of others, to risk death again, was no life at all. And so, together, a small group planned their departure. The escape was bold, though not perfectly executed. About 70 men managed to slip away, seizing kitchen knives and makeshift weapons, then overwhelming guards to flee into the countryside. From this small beginning, a movement grew. The countryside of Italy was full of slaves, men and women toiling on large estates. When word spread that a band of gladiators had broken free, others joined them. The group swelled from dozens to hundreds, and soon to thousands. Imagine the camp they built. Rough, disorganized at first, with men, women, and children gathered around fires, sleeping under makeshift shelters, their numbers growing every day. Spartacus emerged as their leader, but by the natural respect he inspired. He was disciplined, intelligent, and cautious. Unlike some who craved only plunder, he sought a broader vision, to lead the enslaved out of Italy, perhaps to freedom beyond the Alps. Rome, at first, underestimated him. The Senate sent small forces to crush the uprising, but each was defeated. Again and again, Spartacus's army outmaneuvered professional soldiers. Farmers left their fields to join him. Entire cohorts of the enslaved, once resigned to labor, found hope in his banner. But as the rebellion grew, so too did its challenges. The army of Spartacus was vast, yet poorly supplied. They lived off what they could seize: grain from the fields, tools turned into weapons, livestock taken from estates. For those who followed him, there was always uncertainty. Each day brought skirmishes, each week new marches. The dream of escape grew ever harder to realize. In time, Rome understood the seriousness of the threat. A man named Marcus Licinius Crassus, one of the wealthiest in the empire, took command. He was determined, resourceful, and utterly committed to restoring order. His legions were numerous, disciplined, and equipped with the full weight of Rome behind them. The war turned grim. Spartacus and his followers fought with determination, but the might of Rome pressed in from every side. In a final confrontation, his army was shattered. Spartacus himself fell in battle, though his exact fate is uncertain. Some say he fought bravely to the end, refusing to flee, a soldier to the last. Others suggest his body was never found, lost among the countless dead. In the aftermath, the consequences were severe. Thousands of captured rebels were executed, crucified along the road leading to Rome, as a warning to all who might dream of defiance. Yet, even in defeat, Spartacus's story endures. He was not a king, nor a general born to power. He was a man forced into chains, who nevertheless carved a place in history by daring to resist. His life reminds us of the countless others whose names are lost, slaves and common people who bore the weight of empire in silence. As you reflect on Spartacus, imagine the quiet after the storm of his rebellion. The fields of Italy returned to their work, the cities to their trade, the Senate to its politics. Yet, for a brief moment, the order of Rome trembled. And that moment remains a reminder, even now, of the fragility of power and of the human longing for freedom. From the struggles of Spartacus, we turn to a quieter kind of remembrance. Not a rebellion, nor a march across Italy, but a single city, stilled in time. Pompeii. When you hear the name, it is almost always connected with its end, the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in the year 79 of our era. But tonight, rather than focusing on the moment of destruction, let us wander through what was preserved, and what the ruins whisper to us about the rhythm of Roman life. Imagine arriving at the city gates. Pompeii was not vast, like Rome itself, yet it was lively. Perhaps 20,000 people lived here: merchants, farmers, artisans, freedmen, and a scattering of the wealthy elite. Its streets were lined with houses, shops, and taverns. Its air carried the sound of hammers, the laughter of children, and the murmur of conversation spilling from courtyards. The streets themselves are still here, paved with worn stones. You can picture yourself stepping onto them, noticing the deep grooves cut into the surface by centuries of cartwheels. Across the paving stones are raised blocks, stepping stones that allowed pedestrians to cross without muddying their feet, when rainwater and waste flowed along the gutters. To your left, you might see a bakery. The remains of grinding mills are still visible. Tall stone wheels once turned by donkeys, grinding grain into flour. In the adjoining room, ovens are built into the walls, their mouths blackened from years of heat. Imagine the smell of fresh bread mingled with the faint sweetness of honey cakes. For ordinary people, this was daily nourishment, baked anew each morning. Further along is a tavern, its counter of stone pierced with round holes. Into these, jars of food and drink were set, ready to be served. Wine diluted with water, hot stews of lentils, bowls of olives, all were offered to the steady hum of conversation. On the walls, faint traces of painted decoration remain: bright reds, deep blues, and playful scenes that gave the rooms a lively atmosphere. But it is in the houses that Pompeii reveals the most personal details. Step into a modest home, and you might find a simple atrium, an open hall with a pool in the center to collect rainwater. The walls are painted with small frescoes, perhaps mythological scenes or delicate patterns of birds and plants. These paintings are not only decoration, but a glimpse into the aspirations of the people who live there, their tastes, their desires, their attempts to bring beauty into everyday life. In wealthier villas, the paintings are even more elaborate. Entire walls are covered in scenes of landscapes, gardens, or grand columns that give the illusion of space beyond the room. The dining rooms are decorated with images of gods, of banquets, of fruits overflowing from bowls. You can almost hear the soft strumming of a lyre, the clink of cups, the murmur of a dinner gathering stretching long into the evening. Graffiti too lines the walls of Pompeii. Far from being crude, these inscriptions reveal an intimate side of Roman society. Some are simple greetings. Marcus loves Julia. Others advertise gladiatorial games or praise local taverns. One reads, "I am amazed, wall, that you have not already collapsed under the weight of so much writing." These little lines carry voices across to millennia, ordinary voices that would otherwise have vanished. The eruption preserved all of this in an unusual way. The ash and pumice sealed objects where they lay. A loaf of bread was left in an oven, still bearing the baker's stamp. A bronze lamp, shaped like a dolphin, was found where it had fallen. Even the shapes of wooden doors and furniture remain, their outlines impressed into the hardened ash, a reminder of how complete the city once was. In the gardens of Pompeii, archaeologists have traced the roots of ancient vines, finding that rows of grape plants grew much as they do in vineyards today. In kitchens, jars of olives, figs, and nuts were discovered, showing us the diets of those who lived here. And in the marketplaces, scales, coins, and weights reveal the workings of trade. Walking through the ruins now, there is a stillness. No smoke, no sound of vendors, no laughter echoing from courtyards, only stone and silence. Yet the city feels alive in another way, alive with memory. Every doorway, every painted wall, every scratched word in plaster speaks of a life once present. It is tempting to think of Pompeii only as a tragedy. But in truth, it is also a gift to us, a window into the ordinary. Without it, we might imagine Roman life only through marble statues or the grand speeches of senators. With it, we see the bread, the wine, the graffiti, the painted flowers on the walls of a child's room. We see the rhythms of life that were common, unremarkable, yet deeply human. And so, as we leave Pompeii behind, we carry with us not only the memory of its end, but the quiet truth of its everyday existence. A city where people loved, labored, ate, and rested. A city that, though silenced, continues to speak. We have walked through crowded alleys, climbed into fragile tenements, and wandered the silent remains of Pompeii. Now, let us step into another world entirely, the world of Rome's elite. Imagine approaching the villa of a senator, one of the powerful men who shaped the destiny of the Republic and later the Empire. From the outside, the building may not seem grand. The walls facing the street are plain, solid, and almost austere. But once you pass through the doorway, the space unfolds in ways designed to impress. You enter the atrium, a wide central hall open to the sky. Rainwater trickles gently into the pool at its center, called the impluvium. Around you, the walls are painted in rich colors: deep red, dark blue, and gold. Some display mythological scenes: Hercules at his labors, Venus rising from the sea, or Apollo strumming a lyre. Others create illusions of gardens or columns, giving a sense of space and grandeur. The air smells faintly of incense, burned as an offering to the household gods, whose small shrine stands in a niche near the entrance. Here, the senator's family begins their day with quiet rituals, offering wine or a pinch of grain to the Lares and Penates, guardians of the home. Moving further in, you pass into the tabline, the formal reception room. It is here that the senator greets his clients each morning. These clients are men of lower status who rely on his patronage, and in return, they offer loyalty and support. Picture the line of men waiting patiently to exchange respectful words, to bow slightly, to receive perhaps a small gift or an introduction that might help them in their affairs. The villa itself is not only a home, but a stage. Every room, every decoration, every garden path is designed to convey dignity, wealth, and Roman virtue. The floors are covered in mosaics, some simple black and white patterns, others elaborate pictures of fish, birds, or mythological creatures. The ceilings are painted, the doors carved from fine wood. Even the furniture, though sparse compared to modern tastes, is made of polished bronze, marble, or imported ivory. Let us pause in the peristyle garden. This is a quiet courtyard surrounded by a colonnade. The columns are smooth and cool to the touch, their stone catching the light of the sun. In the center stands a fountain, the gentle trickle of water offering relief from the heat of the day. Beds of flowers and herbs grow neatly in rows, while statues of gods and heroes stand watch. It is a place of peace, a retreat within the walls of the house. Meals in such a villa are elaborate affairs. Imagine being invited to a dinner. You recline on a couch in the triclinium, a dining room arranged around a low table. The senator and his family sit with their guests, while servants bring course after course: oysters, roasted meats, stews flavored with herbs, fruits preserved in honey, and sweet pastries. Wine flows freely, always mixed with water, sometimes spiced with cinnamon or cooled with snow carried down from the mountains. The conversation drifts from politics to philosophy, from poetry to the affairs of the city. A musician may play softly in the corner, while lamps glow with steady flames. Outside, the streets may be loud, the tenements crowded and restless. But here, the atmosphere is controlled, ordered, and serene. Beyond daily life, the villa also serves as a symbol of political power. Senators are not merely wealthy. They are men whose voices shape the Senate, who guide military campaigns, who decide the taxes and the laws. Their homes are filled with reminders of this. Busts of ancestors line the halls, each carved in stone, preserving the stern faces of those who came before. These images remind every visitor that the family's influence is deep and enduring. Yet even within this world of luxury, there is still a rhythm of vulnerability. Fires may still threaten, disease may still creep through the city, and political fortunes may shift with the winds of favor. A senator may hold great power today, and tomorrow find himself exiled, or worse. The villa, for all its beauty, cannot completely shield its owners from the uncertainties of Rome. Still, as you walk slowly through its rooms in your imagination, you notice how carefully it is designed to create harmony. Cool marble underfoot, the sound of water in the fountain, the scent of rosemary and roses in the garden, all combine to create an atmosphere far removed from the cramped, noisy insulae where most Romans lived. It is this contrast between the crowded tenements and the ordered villa that reveals so much about Roman society. A city of extraordinary grandeur and deep inequality, where the same street carried senators in their fine litters and beggars searching for scraps. A city of stone, of noise, of ambition, and of dreams. And as the lamps in the villa are extinguished for the night, the house falls into silence, just as the city beyond continues to murmur and shift. And so, our journey through ancient Rome draws to a close. We have wandered its crowded streets, shared the struggles of the poor in their fragile insulae, followed the rise and fall of Spartacus, glimpsed the frozen life of Pompeii, and stepped into the quiet luxury of a senator's villa. Rome was not only marble arches and conquering legions. It was also bread baked in smoky ovens, graffiti scratched on plaster walls, footsteps echoing in narrow streets, and fountains trickling in shaded gardens. It was a place of contrasts, of poverty and wealth, of noise and silence, of struggle and splendor. As you rest now, let these images fade gently into the distance. Imagine the sound of water flowing through Roman aqueducts, steady and calm. Imagine the faint flicker of an oil lamp in the quiet of the night. The past lingers softly like a dream, distant but never entirely gone. And with that thought, allow yourself to drift, to let the world of Rome recede into stillness, and to find rest in the quiet comfort of the present. Good night. Welcome. Settle in, take a slow breath, and allow yourself to drift into the quiet rhythm of history. Tonight, we will wander back to the Middle Ages, on age of contrast, of hardship and splendor, of quiet prayers and noisy marketplaces. Our journey will not be rushed. It will move at the pace of a meandering river, calm and steady, carrying you gently from one time and place to another. You may find yourself awake and listening, or you may allow the words to blur into the background, like the murmur of distant voices. Either way, the stories will be here, unspooling patiently. We will begin in the narrow, crowded streets of a medieval slum, where life was precarious and survival never guaranteed. From there, we will step into a courtroom and witness the trial of Joan of Arc, a young woman who defied kings and priests. Later, we will trace the mystery of the Black Death, that shadow which reshaped Europe in ways no one expected. And finally, we will ascend into the world of castles and banquets, to glimpse the life of the nobility, their rituals, their celebrations, their comforts so far removed from the slums below. But for now, let us take our first step into those winding alleys, dimly lit, thick with the scent of humanity, where daily life unfolded in ways that might seem unimaginable today. Imagine yourself in a medieval city. It is morning, though the sun is not yet visible from the cramped street where you find yourself. The houses lean in toward one another, built of wood and daub, so close that you can almost touch the opposite wall if you reach out your hand. The air is heavy, carrying the mingled scents of damp straw, smoke from cooking fires, and the faint but ever-present odor of refuse. You live here now, or at least, for the sake of our story, imagine that you do. This is a slum, one of many that clustered around the heart of Europe's medieval towns. Life is relentless here. Each day is marked by noise, labor, and a constant negotiation with discomfort. The first thing you might notice is your bed. It is little more than a pile of straw, perhaps with a coarse woolen blanket thrown over it. At night, as you try to sleep, you feel movement within the straw, small, incessant. The bedding is alive with lice and fleas, companions you cannot truly escape. They crawl across your skin, biting, leaving you itchy and restless. This was so common that people scarcely remarked upon it. It was simply life. When you rise, you step carefully over the chamber pot at the foot of the bed. During the night, it filled with the needs of the household. Soon, someone, perhaps even you, will open the door and fling its contents into the narrow alley outside. There, the liquid will trickle down the worn cobblestones, mingling with rainwater and other refuse. It is said that in some towns, cries of warning, Gardaloo in Scotland, or Mind out below in other tongues would accompany the act. But in truth, much of the time, there was no warning at all. The streets are always changing, depending on the weather. In the summer heat, the waste dries, leaving behind a powdery dust that lingers in the air. In the winter, it freezes, hardening into jagged shapes beneath your feet. After heavy rain, the alleys become streams of foul water, and you must lift your skirts or your trousers to keep them from being soaked. Boots help, but many cannot afford them. Bare feet on cold, wet stone are a common experience. Food is always on your mind. A loaf of bread, hard and coarse, may be the staple of your day. If you are fortunate, there is cheese, perhaps a bit of salted fish. Meat is rare, more often gristle and bone than tender flesh. In the markets, guilds regulate who may sell and what may be sold, ensuring that bakers, butchers, and brewers keep their monopolies. Prices are high, quality often questionable. For the poorest, hunger is constant, a low ache that never fully disappears. And yet, life persists. Children play in the street, weaving between carts and animals. The clatter of a blacksmith's hammer rings out from a workshop. A woman leans from a window, hanging damp laundry that drips down onto passers-by. There's laughter here, as well as sorrow, but always there is danger. The houses, built of timber and packed so closely together, are tinder boxes. A single spark from a cooking fire could race across the rooftops, devouring entire streets before anyone could respond. The city watch may try to intervene, forming bucket chains from wells or rivers, but water is slow and flames are swift. For the inhabitants of the slum, fire is a constant, lingering fear. Disease, too, hovers like an unseen shadow. Without sewers, without clean water, sickness spreads easily. A cough, a fever, an unseen pest borne by rats, these can sweep through a neighborhood, taking lives swiftly. Few understand the causes, though theories abound. Bad air, sinful living, the displeasure of God. Remedies are rudimentary at best. Herbs tied in sachets, prayers whispered in the dark. And so, each day is a balancing act. You rise, you eat what you can, you work if there is work, and you endure. Perhaps you are a tanner, your hands perpetually steeped in foul-smelling vats. Perhaps you are a washerwoman, endlessly scrubbing at other people's linens until your knuckles crack. Perhaps you are unemployed, relying on odd jobs, begging, or the uncertain charity of others. Poverty presses down with a weight that is almost physical. Yet even here, amid hardship, there is a rhythm to life. Church bells mark the hours, markets bustle at midday. Stories are told at night by firelight. Families crowd together not only for warmth, but for comfort, for the reassurance that, though life is fragile, it is also shared. The medieval slum was not a place of glamour, but it was alive, pulsing with human struggle and endurance. For the modern visitor, someone like you, it would be almost impossible to survive even a week. The lice, the hunger, the filth, the ever-present threat of disaster would overwhelm the body and the mind. But for those who lived it, it was simply life. Life without question, life without comparison, life accepted day by day. And as we leave these shadowed alleys, we carry with us an understanding of just how tenuous existence once was, and how remarkable the endurance of ordinary people could be. Let us now turn from the slums to another part of the medieval world, not the crowded streets of the poor, but the solemn chambers of justice, where the fate of a young woman would become legend. Step now from the narrow, crowded alleys of the slum into another place entirely. The air is different here. It is hushed, heavy, and filled not with the cries of street vendors, but with the murmured voices of clerics and judges. We are entering a chamber of law in the 15th century, a medieval courtroom, where fate is not measured in coins or bread, but in eternal salvation or eternal damnation. In this place sits a young woman. She is not a peasant in the shadows, nor a noble on a throne, but something altogether more unusual. Her name is Jean d'Arcjoun of Arcand. Though she is barely 19 years old, her life has already altered the course of kingdoms. Joan was born in 1412 in the small village of in northeastern France. She grew up in a modest household, tending sheep, working with her family in the fields, and learning the rhythms of peasant life. Yet from an early age she claimed to hear voices, saints and angels, she said, urging her to take up a divine mission, to drive out the English, who occupied much of France, and to see the rightful king, Charles VII, crowned in Reims. By the time she was 17, Joan had achieved the unimaginable. She convinced leaders to let her accompany an army. Dressed in armor, carrying a banner, she became a symbol of divine favor. Soldiers followed her, towns welcomed her, and victories soon followed, most famously the lifting of the siege of Agnes, Arjo, soon after. Charles was indeed crowned king, but triumph did not last. In 1430, Joan was captured by Burgundian forces, allies of the English. She was sold to the English, who, unwilling to kill her in battle, chose instead to destroy her in court. Now imagine the scene. It is 1431 in Rouen. The great stone walls of the courtroom seem cold, almost damp. The light filters in through narrow windows, casting pale beams across long wooden benches. Clergymen sit in rows, robed and solemn. They are educated men, versed in scripture, law, and rhetoric. Joan, however, is no scholar. She cannot read or write. And yet, she faces them with steady composure. The charge is heresy, dangerous word in the Middle Ages. To be accused of heresy is to be accused not only of error, but of defying God himself. The trial is not fair in any modern sense. Joan has no real defense, no impartial jury. Her interrogators press her again and again, questioning her visions, her faith, her clothing. Her clothing, in particular, becomes a focus. She wears men's attire, hose, tunic, armor when in battle. For the judges, this is unnatural, even sinful. Yet Joan defends herself calmly, saying she wears what is practical, what keeps her safe, what allows her to carry out her mission. Over and over, she resists their attempts to twist her words. The trial stretches on for months. Imagine the fatigue, the endless questioning, the attempt to catch her in contradiction. Yet Joan does not falter. At times, her answers reveal not only steadfastness, but wit. When asked if she knows she is in God's grace, a question meant to trap her sense, claiming it outright could be considered pride, and denying it could be considered blasphemy, she replies, "If I am not, may God put me there. If I am, may God keep me." This answer, simple and balanced, confounds her interrogators. Still, the outcome is already decided. Political forces outweigh truth. The English wish to discredit her, to erase her victories, to brand her as a fraud. The court delivers its verdict: guilty of heresy. The sentence is grim. Joan is to be handed over to the secular authorities for execution. On the morning of May 30th, 1431, she is led to the marketplace of Rouen. A great wooden pyre awaits her. The crowd gathers, some hostile, some sorrowful, some merely curious. Joan, still only 19, is tied to the stake. Witnesses describe her praying, calling upon saints, calling upon Christ. And then the fire is lit. The smoke rises, the flames consume. In time, there is nothing left but ashes. The English hope that her name will be forgotten, that her cause will be silenced. But in truth, it is the opposite. Joan becomes a symbol greater than she ever was in life. A martyr to some, a saint to others. A legend for all of France. Decades later, her trial is retried, this time by a different court, under a different pope. The verdict of heresy is overturned. Joan is declared innocent. Centuries after that, she is canonized as a saint, her memory enshrined not in a courtroom, but in churches across the world. And so we step back from the chamber, from the marketplace, from the smoke that once filled the sky. Joan of Arc's trial reminds us how the machinery of power could grind down even the bravest of souls. Yet it also shows how memory can outlast judgment, how faith, whether one shares it or not, can shape the story of a nation. Now, from this tale of a single figure, let us move into something broader, something more mysterious. A shadow that fell not on one person alone, but across entire continents. The Black Death. A sickness so devastating that it altered the very structure of medieval life. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the sound of silence. Not the gentle quiet of a countryside evening, but a heavier silence, one that comes when streets once filled with chatter and footsteps grow empty. When doors remain closed, when the rhythm of daily life falters. This was the silence that settled over Europe in the middle of the 14th century, when the Black Death arrived. The plague, as it was called, appeared in Europe around 1347. Its origins remain debated even today. Many believe it began in Central Asia, carried westward along trade routes, the Silk Road. Caravan trails, merchant ships, before it reached the bustling ports of the Mediterranean. From there, it spread outward, traveling with merchants, sailors, and the cargo they carried. Picture the docks of a medieval harbor. Ships rocking gently in the tide, their sails furled, crews unloading good spices, cloth, grain. Yet within the holds of some of these vessels, unseen travelers lurked. Rats scurried among the barrels, and upon their backs clung fleas. Within the fleas lived the bacteria that caused the plague. Tiny, invisible, yet capable of altering the fate of continents. The illness spread with frightening speed. A person might be well one morning, feverish by evening, and gone within days. To the people of the 14th century, it was an incomprehensible terror. Medical knowledge was limited. They saw only the symptoms, the swiftness, and the scale. Some blamed the air itself, what they called miasma, or bad vapors. Others believed it was a punishment from God, a chastisement for human sin. Still others whispered of poisoned wells, conspiracies, or dark sorcery. The numbers defy imagination. Historians estimate that between 1/3 and 1/2 of Europe's population perished within just a few years. Entire villages were abandoned, their fields untended. Towns lost half their inhabitants. Even great cities, once full of life, became places of hushed fear. Imagine walking through such a city. The usual sounds are gone. The blacksmith's hammer lies silent. Market stalls stand empty. Bells toll, not to mark the hour, but to mark another burial. Cartwheels creak slowly as they carry the departed to mass graves. The rhythm of life falters, replaced by a slower, heavier rhythm, the rhythm of loss. And yet, out of devastation, change emerged. The aftermath of the Black Death reshaped Europe in ways that could never have been predicted. With so many lives lost, the balance between labor and land shifted. Fields still needed tending, cloth still needed weaving, bread still needed baking. But with fewer workers available, those who remained could demand more. Wages rose in many places. The rigid structure of feudalism, the binding of peasants to their lords, began to loosen. For survivors, the world felt altered. Some grew more devout, turning fervently to prayer, pilgrimages, and penance. Others became more skeptical, questioning the institutions that had seemed powerless against the plague. Art and literature reflected this shift. Images of the dance of death appeared, reminding all that mortality was universal, sparing neither king nor beggar. Psychologically, the Black Death left a deep imprint. Life seemed fragile, uncertain, fleeting. But at the same time, opportunities opened for those who endured. Land lay vacant, guilds sought apprentices, towns offered rights and freedoms to attract new settlers. A new Europe, scarred yet transformed, slowly began to rise from the silence. Archaeologists today still uncover traces of this catastrophe. In London, beneath modern streets, mass burial pits have been found, carefully laid rows of skeletons, silent witnesses to that moment in time. In villages abandoned after the plague, outlines of houses remain, overgrown by grass and trees. Reminders of communities that simply vanished. The Black Death was more than a disease. It was a turning point, a force that reshaped demography, economics, religion, and culture. It humbled the mighty and burdened the poor. It lingered not only in memory, but in the very fabric of medieval life for centuries afterward. And now, as we leave behind this shadowed chapter, we ascend from the silence of the plague into a very different scene. Not the empty alleys of loss, but the brightly lit halls of nobility, where feasts and tournaments unfolded in stark contrast to the hunger and hardship below. From the hushed silence of plague-ridden streets, let us now move upward toward high stone walls, tall towers, and great wooden gates. Imagine a medieval castle rising above the surrounding countryside. Where once we stood in narrow slums or among empty villages, now we find ourselves in a place of privilege and splendor, reserved for lords, ladies, and their retinues. Inside, the air is warmer, scented not of refuse and smoke, but of roasting meats, spiced wine, and beeswax candles. The stone walls echo with the sounds of music and conversation. This is the world of the feast. Feasting in a medieval castle was more than eating. It was theater, ceremony, and politics combined. Imagine long trestle tables set in a great hall, the flicker of torches casting light across banners and tapestries. At the highest point of the hall sits the lord, sometimes with his lady at his side, raised above the company on a dais. Rank and order are clear. Nobles closest to the head, lesser guests farther down. Everyone knows their place. The meal begins with a procession. Dishes are carried in one by one, announced and displayed before they are served. A roasted peacock, resplendent with feathers carefully reattached to its body for decoration. A swan, its neck elegantly arched. Platters of venison, pork, or goose. Trenchers' flat pieces of coarse bread serve as plates for many. The wealthiest dine from pewter or silver, but for most, bread suffices. Spices, costly and rare, add prestige to the meal. Cinnamon, cloves, and pepper, brought from faraway lands, transform simple dishes into symbols of status. Wine flows freely, sometimes mulled with honey and herbs. Ale is common, too, brewed, thick, and nourishing. Between courses, minstrels perform, jesters entertain, or poets recite verses. For nobles, a feast is not only pleasure, but also performance. Hospitality displays wealth. Generosity displays power. To feed many mouths, to offer abundance, to host with grandeur, these acts reinforce authority as much as soldiers or stone walls. Beyond the hall, the noble life holds other diversions. Hunting is central, a pursuit that is both practical and symbolic. Picture the lord and his company riding through forests with hounds, their horns echoing through the trees. The hunt provides food, yes, but also demonstrates skill, bravery, and dominance over nature. Tournaments, to fill the calendar. Knights tilt at one another in the lists, lances shattering upon shields. The spectacle is loud, dramatic, and dangerous. But beneath the clash of arms lies a ritual of honor, an assertion of the values of chivalry. To the watching crowd, it is entertainment. To the participants, it is both test and display. And yet, for all its pageantry, noble life remains fragile. Castles, though strong, are not invulnerable. Feasts end, hunts return empty, tournaments claim lives. Beneath the surface of splendor lies the same truth that haunted the slums and the plague-stricken streets. Life in the Middle Ages was never free from risk, never secure, never guaranteed. Still, the contrast is striking. While peasants huddled in dark rooms over coarse bread, nobles dined in halls glittering with light and sound. While slum dwellers feared the spark of a fire, nobles planned elaborate hunts and jousts. The gap between these worlds was immense, yet, together, they formed the tapestry of medieval society. And so, our journey draws to a close. We have walked the narrow alleys of the slum, where lice and hunger were constant companions. We have stood in the courtroom of Rouen, watching Joan of Arc face her judges with steady faith. We have drifted through the silence of the Black Death, its shadow darkening villages and cities alike. And finally, we have stepped into the glittering halls of the castle, where banquets and hunts displayed wealth and power. Together, these glimpses remind us of the contrasts of medieval life, of hardship and resilience, of despair and splendor. They remind us how much has changed, and yet how human endurance, ambition, and ritual remain constant across the centuries. Now, as you rest here in the present, you can let the past drift gently away. The sounds of the medieval world fade, like distant bells carried off by the wind. You are safe, far from those slums, far from the courtroom, far from the plague and the castle. What remains is a quiet appreciation of the long story of humanity, the struggles, the triumphs, the fragile lives lived long ago. Allow yourself to breathe slowly, to let your thoughts soften, to welcome rest. History has told its story for tonight, and you may let sleep carry you onward, calm and unhurried into dreams.